One, two, three.
오디오월드. 구독과
It's gone.
좋아요.
안녕하세요. 코난거 김편의 오디오월드입니다. 이번 시간에는 여기 이분들 보이시나요? 예, 새로운 반가운 손님이 오셨습니다. 예, 이번 시간은 저희와 영국의 코드 일렉트로닉스의 대표분과 또 여기 계신 또 직원분과 같이 인터뷰를 하는 시간을 갖도록 하겠습니다. 여기 계신 분은 저쪽에 계신 분은 존 프랭스 코드 일렉트로닉스의 창립자이자 현재 대표분이시고요. 이쪽에 또 콜린 분, 이렇게 두 분 모셨습니다. 일단은 이 두 분 저희 채널에서 좀 생소할 수도 있으니까 자신의 소개 한번 부탁드려 봅니다.
I'm John Franks. I am the founder and owner of Cord Electronics, and I do a lot of the design work, both the outer and the inside of the products.
My name's Colin Pratt. I'm the sales director for Cord Electronics. I've been working with John now for 13 years. And my role is to look after all of the distribution channels across the world and look after the sales team.
네, 일단은 이 다음에 이제 본격적으로 최근에 발매된 제품에 대해서 저희가 집중적으로 이야기해보는 시간을 갖도록 하겠습니다. 참고로 요 앞에 저희가 최근에 좀 출시된 것과 저희가 사용 중인 제품들 이렇게 좀 DP를 해놨습니다. 일단 중앙에 최상단에는 코드 일렉트로닉스의 휴고 TT2DA시고요. 중앙에는 M 스케일러 있습니다. 그리고 밑에 있는 제품이 이제 오늘 좀 인터뷰에서 얘기를 할 BerTTi라는 파워앰프가 있고요. 그리고 요 앞에 있는 제 앞에 있는 거는 수지라는 제품인데 이게 신제품입니다. 국내 아직 정식 출시는 안 됐어요. 예, 프리앰프고요. 그리고 김편님 저쪽 편에 있는 저 제품은 여러분들 좀 생소하실 텐데 알토라는 헤드폰 앰프입니다. 신제품이고요. 이렇게 제품 여러 개 이제 디스플레이 해놨는데 일단은 김편님이 준비해 오신 게 되게 많더라고요. 김편님부터
그렇죠. 그러니까 번갈아 가면서 한번 좀
예.
평상시에 궁금했던 거 코드 일렉트로닉스에 대한 그리고 신제품 버티와 알토 그리고 이제 그 수지 이렇게 좀 생각나는 대로 좀 한번 준비를 했는데요. 첫 번째 좀 궁금했던 겁니다. 예전 코드는 그러니까 디지털 소스 기기만 소형 제품을 내놓았는데 최근에는 이제 버티를 비롯해서 수지, 알토 등 앰프들도 소형 제품을 내놓고 있어요. 이것에 대한 어떤 특별한 이유가 있는지 좀 먼저 묻고 싶습니다.
Yes, I recognized that in many countries, a lot of people, usually guys, have money, but they don't have space to live. They have relatively small rooms. Maybe they're still with their parents, but they have a nice car, a nice watch, a nice camera, but they just don't have space for a big hi-fi system. And so really that was my idea, to really mold our products, keeping the technology as high as possible, but making the products physically smaller. That was my reason.
전 이 얘기 들으니까 예전에 사용했던 코드 제품이 있으면 생각이 나요. 지금은 이제 단종돼서 없는데 예전에 메조 50, 메조 140 이런 그 파워앰프가 있어서 그 제품을 썼던 적이 있거든요. 그 당시에 이제 제 방이 되게 좁아가지고 말씀하신 대로 방이 너무 좁아가지고 작은 북쉘프에 그것도 되게 조그만 버티보다 더 작은 파워앰프였거든요. 그거를 이제 모노브리지에서 이렇게 사용했던 기억이 나는데 저는 이게 버티 보니까 버티도 모노브리지가 가능한가요?
It could be done, but I don't think that there really would be any necessity because the power is considerably more than the original Mezzo 50. So I think you'll be okay. You don't need to do it.
예, 그리고 평상시에 궁금했었던 게 지금 이제 알토 같은 경우는 이제 이 헤드폰 앰프 기능이 먼저 이제 주가 되는데 코드에서 이 헤드폰 앰프나 포터블 제품이 차지하는 비중이 이 전체 매출 중에서 어느 정도 차지하는지 좀 궁금합니다.
Okay, well, I think first of all, maybe I should explain a little more about Alto, because Alto is actually a professional product. It was designed. As a company, we have a pro audio business for studios, for high quality amplifiers within studio environments like the BBC or Sony or many other studios all around the world. But we identified that there was a requirement because people were they wanted to mix on headphones and not on their near fields because most people were listening. So when a recording artist or a record producer is working, the recording engineers really want to work with how people would listen to the product. So that's why we developed this product for the pro market. But having said that, once we built it, we showed it around to a few of our distributors, and they really said, "Oh, can we have this as well?" So we said, "Okay." So this is the first pro product that we have that we've actually brought it across to the consumer market.
그럼 이 알토가 무슨 뜻인가요?
Alto is a musical term, meaning not the highest. You know, you have a mezzo, soprano, then you have an alto, and different layers in the choral piece. So an alto is just one of those. So we picked that. There will be other products in this range because it is for us already very successful. So we're expanding the range. And no doubt we'll be talking to you next year about those products. But as I say, we are expanding the range of this type of product. So it's a name, but it's a nice name. It's much better, we feel, to give a product a name than calling it the AXB112 or something. You know, it's much better to give, because people think on names. Names are easy for people to remember. So.
그러면은 갑자기 생각나는데 이 스튜디오 쪽 프로페셔널 쪽 라인업이잖아요. 라인업이 이제 하이파이 쪽으로 이제 론칭을 하신 건데 사실 하이파이 쪽의 유저들은 지금 가장 기대하는 거는 좀 DAC예요. DAC. 약간 코드 전체적으로 보면 미드 정도 되는 그러면은 정말 프로페셔널 그레이드의 DAC를 알토와 짝이 되는 알토와 커플링이 되는 프로페셔널 그레이드의 뭐 DAC를 출시할 생각은 없으신지 예를 들어서 뭐 테너 DAC라든가 이렇게 되겠죠.
Yeah, I'll leave you with that.
So what we always do is we look at each problem in the studio, and the problem with the studio is there is not enough space in the rack, and John Franks can develop a product which will replace maybe 3 pieces with one half of a rack. And then, yes, so it will allow for an expansion of products, but until they're developed, there's not much point in talking about them. We just wish to focus on what is currently available. So Alto is a really interesting story at the moment for us, with the headphone, the near field monitor, and then the XLR out to the active speakers, which gives a multiple use for different studios and home use.
버티 파워 앰프 얘기인데요. 이 출력단에는 모스펫이 채널당 몇 개나 투입이 됐는지, 그리고 8옴 출력만 공개가 돼 있는데 4옴 출력은 어떻게 되는지 좀 궁금합니다.
Yeah. It'll double. It'll double in 4. And there are 8 Mosfets in each channel, so 16 in total. But they're double Mosfets inside. So there are 2 silicon die on the substrate inside the transistor. So there are 4 and 4, but they're double inside.
그럼 그 두 개라는 게 P-type MOSFET and N-type MOSFET?
Yes,
right?
yes. But the Alto is totally different, and I can give you more information about the technology that we have developed for Alto, and we're bringing it across to other products. I can talk about that if you wish.
그 트랜지스터 중에 뭐 모스펫도 있고 AB 클래스 구현하는데 모스펫도 있지만 뭐 일반적으로 바이폴라 이런 거 많이 쓰잖아요. 근데 꼭 모스펫을 고집하는 이유가 있는지.
Well, okay, I can explain. About probably 9 years ago, I came across a research paper by a professor in one of our universities, but it was a paper dated back in the 1980s. And he developed a system where by using in the amplifier circuitry some additional amplifiers that are actually like monitors. They're monitoring, but they only look after the MOSFETs at the back of the amplifier. They're actually monitoring those MOSFETs because MOSFETs are not as linear devices as transistors. They have a different characteristic, so they need more control. And so within my designs, I incorporated this additional control on both sides, both P channel and N channel. And this makes everything linearize and the distortion falls to the floor and many good things happen. So that is why I adopted this approach. And our amplifiers were always good, but when we adopted this ultimate technology, they got even better. So, well, basically, within an amplifier, you have the small signal stuff at the front. This is just an explanation, not for. You have the small signal stuff, and the voltage will be increased. But then you have to boost the current. That's the amount of power that will be swung between the power supply rails. The problem is that MOSFETs are unusual devices. Lateral structure MOSFETs have a certain type of characteristic, and they change with temperature, and many considerations are always changing slightly. But so what I do, I put additional amplifiers right at the back end of the amplifier to just monitor each FET individually, and this enables me to once you're monitoring the amplifiers, you can make quick corrections. It's rather like an autopilot on an aeroplane. You know, on an aeroplane, you have many different controls, and many fighter aircraft are designed to be very agile. But in order to fly straight and level, they've got to be continually making tiny movements, and you have a computer that does that. My background is avionics, electronics for aircraft, and essentially it's like an additional control that is always monitoring the overall state of the amplifier and making tiny corrections that actually just correct for any changes that are going on. So it's a way of making the amplifiers better.
좀 어렵죠.
네, 그러니까 이게 지금 최근에 그 코드에 화두인 그 울티마 테크놀로지가 이제 결국 모스펫의 어떤 그 리니어리티가 떨어지는 문제를 그걸 하나의 에러로 보고 그걸 고치기 위해서 듀얼 피드 포워드 커렉션 그 기능을 통해서 아까 이제 그 자동 항법 장치처럼 보완했다 그런 말씀인 것 같습니다.
It's a multiple feed forward error correction system.
이 또 코드 일렉트로닉스 하면은 그 모스펫 출력단 말고 또 하나 특징이 이제 SMPS 전원부를 쓰는 건데 그 중에서 스위칭 주파수로 80kHz를 딱 선택한 이유가 무엇인지 그게 궁금합니다.
No, not really. I mean, we have different power supplies for different parts of the circuit. I mean, in the integrated amplifier, we have auxiliary rails which are switching at 500 kilohertz. And the main rails are at around 130 kilohertz. So it varies, but my background in avionics was in power supplies, and I can explain maybe offline a little longer about why high frequency power supplies are actually many times better than normal linear power supplies.
네. 저 같은 경우는 그 파워앰프만으로 봤을 때 저도 뭐 코드 파워앰프 예전에 뭐 조그만 거부터 뭐 큰 거까지 많이 개인적으로 써왔는데 보면은 모르는 사람이 이렇게 들으면 이거 뭐 힘 드라이빙 능력이나 뭐 이렇게 반응 속도 뭐 과도 응답 특성이나 이런 것만 볼 때는 이거 클래스 D 앰프 아니야? 이렇게 착각할 정도로 예, 코드 하면은 스피드거든요. 스피드. 예, 근데 사실 저는 그 제작자 입장에서는 클래스 AB보다 클래스 D에 대한 유혹이 많이 있을 것 같아요. 왜냐면은 뭐 이미 모듈화 돼서 나온 증폭 모듈 같은 것도 있고 클래스 D가 여러 가지 그 효율적인 부분들, 예, 그 성능 면에서도 요즘에 굉장히 많이 발전해서 클래스 D에 대한 막 그런 클래스 D 증폭 앰프를 만들면 좋지 않을까 이런 유혹이 있을 것 같은데 클래스 D와 타협하지 않는 이유 뭐 여러 면에서 뭐가 있을까요?
Yeah, because I've never really heard a nice sounding D-class amplifier. The problem they have is that you have a switching function and with no amplifier, just variable switching bandwidth or the pulse width, and then this goes straight into a filter, and then that is ultimately going onto your loudspeakers. Yes, they work, but I've never heard one sound right, because depending on the loudspeaker, it affects the filter, and therefore it's different every time. You can design a system with a known loudspeaker, but these are meant to be general products. And loudspeakers are complicated. They have many filter components within a loudspeaker, and everyone will interact differently with the high frequency filter in a Class D amplifier. So fundamentally, I just don't think it's right. I mean, they say, they're very efficient. Well, they are, but only at full power. If you look down where they're being played, they're not that efficient. They're only about 40% efficient. So there's no real advantage at all. People are just playing with the numbers. And I think that Rob Watts and myself have looked at Class D amplifiers. And he's a very clever guy, and he assured me that he'd fix all the problems with a D-class amplifier, and I've been waiting 20 years. So I don't think it's ever going to come. Not really. Not a perfect amplifier. They just don't sound right.
지금 존 프랭스가 정말 궁금했던 걸 아주 속 시원하게 지금 답을 해주셨는데, 그러니까 이번 말씀은 뭐냐면은 클래스 D 앰프는 결국 고주파를 없애기 위해서 끝단에 그 로우 패스 필터를 거는데,
그렇죠.
그런데 스피커에도 이미 이제 그 필터가 있으니까 이 필터에 따라서 로우 패스 필터가 제대로 작동을 못할 수가 있다. 스피커에 따라서 변수가 생긴다. 그거를 배제를 시켰다. 이 말씀이 정말 되게 소중한 어떤 지적인 것 같습니다.
네, 새로운 그 관점에서 바라본 개발자만 할 수 있는 이야기인 것 같아요. 예.
Thank you.
I think if I may add one point, is that in the industry, there's a level of quality someone is trying to achieve, and then there's an amount of compromise they're willing to give,
accept.
And those two combined with the price they're trying to achieve, and sometimes the price comes first, so then you use a technology that will compromise the quality to achieve the price. And Chord Electronics has always been absolute performance driven, and John is able to engineer some of the compromises out, so there isn't the compromise in the quality to achieve the performance, which is one of the joys of working at Chord Electronics.
I think really when I was designing for electronics for aeroplanes, the one thing that was always instilled into us young engineers, I was a young engineer then, was that never try to apply a simple fix to a complicated problem. If you have a difficult problem on an aeroplane, you must get to the nub of the issue, and whatever it is, you've got to fix it totally. Because if you just apply a band-aid fix, you know, a plaster over the top, then you may have a problem with the plaster and the original problem's not fixed, and then the plane would fly out of the sky and land not on an airport. It'll land on an apartment building. So really, I think I bought that. I think the most important thing when I brought my ideas to Chord was I wanted to make products that really were fundamentally sound. They were right. You know when a design is right, and you know when a design is a bit iffy. So I like to be, you know, on the side of the right approach.
마지막으로 한국에 코드 일렉트로닉스의 그 팬들이 상당히 많이 있어요. 특히 이제 코드의 독보적인 그런 사운드가 매력적인 그런 것도 있고 중독성이 있는 그런 것도 있다고 생각하거든요, 저는. 그런 의미에서 뭐 한국의 코드 일렉트로닉스 사용자들한테 뭔가 좀 하고 싶은 이야기 있으면 해주셨으면 좋겠습니다.
Well, first of all, I'd like to say thank you, and Korea is very close to my heart, and I have an apartment here in Korea, and my wife spends time here in Korea, and most of the time in England. She's a Korean lady, so it's very important to know, but I think that my philosophy is always to do the very best in design, in care of manufacture of the products that we make. We want to make good products. We like to think of ourselves as a shining example of British industry, and I think that that's the important thing.
So yes, I'd like to echo John's words and thank everyone for their kind words said about Chord Electronics. The authenticity of sound is one of the most important features for us, because it's about getting to the absolute core, the emotional root of the music, and the fact that a lot of John Franks' equipment is used in studios to record the music. Artists rely on Chord Electronics to give the most accurate representation of the music for the customer to listen. So when you listen to Chord Electronics products, you're as close to what the artist intended at the original recording process. And the fact that South Korean customers recognise that is very humbling and heartwarming. So thank you very much.
Audio World. 구독과
좋아요. 좋아요.
Yes.
Audio World. 구독과
좋아요.
감사합니다.
감사합니다.